$1 contract. Let's say Paris, France wants to dissolve some of these. They have to come up with dollars to redeem the owners of the contracts. The contract holders are saying, we don't want the contract anymore. We're going to sell the contract. We need $200 billion in dollars. And you have a month to do it. So the dollar swap facility, that's your smoking gun. It started ramping up in 2015 with horrendous red light signals going off. Who's borrowing all the dollars for the dollar swap facility at the Fed and the Euro Central Bank? The Euro Central Bank was responsible for $2 trillion, $2.1 trillion in dollar swaps back in 2012. That's when I think the petrodollar was starting to be dissolved. Okay, so that forced up demand in the dollar, which lifted the dollar relative to other currencies. In other words, you got this supposed dollar strength. But so many different structures are in the petrodollar that when the dollar goes up, oil goes down. So the part they didn't really plan on, and they're blaming it on Russia, which is stupid, and blaming it on the Saudis to harm Russia, which is stupid. No, it's much simpler. The petrodollar got dismantled, the dollar went up, and like a teeter-totter, the oil went down and wrecked OPEC.
So now they're in a position where they have no choice but to continue the flow for the sake of volume, even though it's really not even cost effective like it was. It's not reaping the benefits that it was for them. They just have to continue the flow to just keep the pipeline running, basically.
Right. Look at it this way. If they keep things going as they are, they've got 3 to 6 months before the regime falls. If they cut production to try to fix a rebound in the oil price, their regime will fall in 1 month.
So this puts them, this puts them in a pretty desperate position. So you got to figure that this was done by design. What do you think they're being positioned to do? I mean, it's kind of fascinating because on the world stage, of course, there's this whole idea about the possibility of revealing these 28 pages that'll implicate the Saudis and and all these other possibilities that are going on while we have the destabilization still in full effect in the entire region, right? What do you think the end game is on this if they've only got 3 to 6 months of survival time that they bought at the current rate?
Well, they go back to goat herding. I like to point out that it wasn't a design. It was a necessity. What brought about this whole scuttling of the petrodollar? It was the need for gold. Gold is behind most everything because we turned ridiculously insolvent in 2008 with Lehman Brothers. All the banks went insolvent. The U.S. government found itself in a desperate place with trillion-dollar annual deficits, which they lie about. They call them $580 billion deficits when they do seasonal adjustments on annual figures, which is absurdity. You don't do any adjustments on annuals except for inflation, and you don't do any adjustment on deficits as it pertains to inflation. You don't do inflation adjustment federal deficit. It's ludicrous. So what happened was they ran out of gold to maintain the whole dollar and fiat currency system, and they decided that unprotected was the Swiss-held gold by the Arabs. They stole the gold from the Arab accounts in 2011 and 12. The UB story is bullshit. The Credit Suisse story is more bullshit. And when the Arabs saw their gold stolen, they decided, we're going to start courting China. And we're going to stop following our American leaders because they're stealing our gold. And besides, we've come to learn that we cannot redeem all our treasury bonds because they're locked in the Exchange Stabilization Fund. So that's when the marriage broke, 2012 and 13. We needed their gold, we stole it, and we therefore had to abandon the petrodollar, and all the liquidation of the giant contracts forced the dollar up, forced oil down. All the stories about oil and its pricing are knucklehead nonsense.
Yeah, well, and